And I realized that something is not quite working there.
Yeah.
And this something seemed to be money.
But money is something that people create. So there should be no reason that people would not do good things because there is no money.
Wie wollen wir die Welt gestalten? How do we want to shape our world? I invite guests that are doing this, that are doing change, bringing change to this world. And today, two wonderful people. It is Katharina Serafimova and it's Arie Ben-David. Already the names give us a hint that you have very interesting and different backgrounds, and you are doing something together now that's called Shareitt. Katharina, what is it, Shareitt?
It's basically an app that totally reshapes the way resources are shared and can be shared without money. So very simple, it enables shopping without money.
Great. We'll come back to that later. Arie, Shareitt is kind of a platform where people can meet and can help each other. Is that a right understanding?
Yes, we have endless resources, both in our homes and skills and capacities that are not actually utilized because there's always not enough money. But money is something that people create. So there should be no reason that people would not do good things because there is no money. So what we created is a platform in which people can actually do shopping without money. Every person has something between 20 or 100 items in his home, anything from books and toys when there are children, and clothes, and any woman normally will have tens of clothes, beautiful, that she won't use, or jewelries and things like that. So imagine a marketplace that you take beautiful photos, you upload it, and then suddenly we have a market with beautiful things, many, many things. Yeah. Just to give a perspective, 75,000 people are using it, and there's 60,000 items in the marketplace, and 250,000 items have changed, and nothing to hurt the environment. These are already existing things. So we have, for example, the Little Prince book. In 1 year it can go to 5 different families, and it's a book that was already created. And the children are already trained when they come to their parents and they ask, "Daddy, when are you going to bring me a new present from Shareitt?" He says, "What about other children? They also want something. Go bring something that you're not using." So the child is putting it up, and then he goes with his father, "Oh, I like this book, I like this toy," and so on. So they're getting used to it. But then the question was, how do we actually deliver it? Because we don't pay money and we don't hurt the environment, but then if we start delivering it with the environmental impact, it won't be a good idea. So we actually, together with the community, developed a system that people deliver on their way to work, on their way home, on their way to drop the children in school. So you have a map and you just put points where you are, all digital, and then those people who are collecting from you, they also have their points. So even with 100 people, you see that the whole country of Israel is covered. Someone goes from the south to Tel Aviv, someone from Tel Aviv to the north. It's phenomenal. And people are very eager to do the delivery because they get points, and then they can buy clothes or buy toys for the children and so on. But one of the most important things is the relationship between the people. So what we see, that people are really meeting through this, because okay, it's just a jewelry, it's just a dress, but now you need to meet someone to bring this dress. And on the way you say, okay, we met now, shall we have coffee? So it's amazing. Actually, there are now 2 ministers of loneliness in the world, in China and in England. And loneliness became an epidemic. It's really difficult to live in this world. You have more and more friends in Facebook and you are more and more lonely. So what happens through that many lonely people join the platform, they put something that they don't use, but then they begin to meet people and they create a relationship and can express a wish. One of the things in the platform is a wish. Now imagine you put a wish and now a whole community of thousands of people are joyfully trying to fulfill your wish. What an energy and experience. So these are some, and people are saving like $300 a month, and they are, in the way they are doing it, every day you have like 400, 500 items that are sold. So people are entering sometimes 20, 50, even 100 times, not to miss the things that are there, because the beautiful things and everything is beautiful. 77% of the items are sold. So what happens then, that they want to make sure that they get to those things that are there. So it's quite an interesting phenomena. And shopping without money gives great joy to people. And it's all women, by the way. We started with women. Everyone reads the Bible and knows that the man was actually the pilot, the MVP, minimum viable product. And then God went to the real thing, which was Eve. So we said, we go with Eve first. And it's amazing because 60 women invited their friends, 500, then 5,000, and then we did the pilot. And they create the intimacy and the relationship and the trust, because this is an important thing. As the trust goes up, then more and more valuable things come, and also people see they can do with it. Someone put a car on the market to sell it for points. So this is a little bit of what we have been doing.
Wonderful. So it's a bit about what is the real relation, if it's not money. So it reminds me the basic social law that was expressed by Rudolf Steiner, who said that, you know, when I do things, I should do it for others. So what can I give? And all I need, I will get from others. I mean, that's probably what you do. What I would be, we'll learn about that more, how precisely you do it and what else you do in this talk. But before I ask that, I would like to know a little bit about how your way was. So, Katharina, first of all, you have this wonderful name that reminds me of the angels, Seraphim. And secondly, I just mentioned Rudolf Steiner. You were in a Waldorf school. Could you? No,
just shortly.
Shortly?
Yeah, because...
Tell us a bit. What was your way?
No, I actually grew up in Portugal.
In Portugal,
so
yeah.
So I was not in a Waldorf school at the time.
Yeah.
So, but I wanted to go back to this money experience first. So I start with the end.
Okay.
Because it's really true. Rudolf Steiner was saying that money is actually the spiritual element of the economy.
Yeah.
And that to me is really, if this is true, so to speak, then one can ask oneself, in the world, the money is created as a debt, at least 19% of it, right? Yeah. So what have we collectively chosen as being the foundation of that spiritual foundation of that one can ask, you know, if we know that debt actually puts people in anxiety and pressure and competition with each other. Yeah. So that to me is very interesting. And when we look at, you just mentioned what we are now creating with Shareitt, the intention is really to bring money back into the function that it actually has. And that to me is really just an expression of gratitude. Yeah. So someone does something or gives away some, we don't call it second-hand items, we actually call it pre-loved items. So those beautiful things that we actually loved, we bought them for a reason. And they now can go to a different place. And the points are more like a gratitude expression. And that to me is actually one of the functions that money could have.
Gratitude instead of debt. But can we look at this a bit closer? Yes. Can I ask you again? Because I'm not sure whether everybody is aware of that. What does it mean? How is money created, and what does it mean when you say it's created by debt?
Well, so many people think that money comes into existence because of, central banks are giving it into existence. But the reality is that money is created out of the thin air, or at least a big part of that, and comes into existence as a debt and issued by banks. And that's an interesting, that's not a secret, that's just how things are, how we collectively have organized the economy to function. And that creates
so the money says, yes, the bank says, yes, I give you money, but only when you pay it back to us and when you pay more than we gave you. Yes. And also when you have a form of material security for it. And I then start with this constant debt that I owe it to them.
And we can think of the word, so for example, the word mortgage, it's morte, holding. It's engage in something that is dead. So it's not a very lively thing, right? So we can imagine that we have created certain structures which are not really, enable and facilitating the living in our society and in the relationship with nature. And you asked me how I came to that. Actually, I'm an ecologist by training, right? Mm-hmm. So I started working with the soil, actually, and I started working with vegetation and developing healthy, renewable and sustainable land development projects. That was my starting point, and I sort of realized that the bigger these projects grew that I was engaged in as a and that we could actually develop with different models of understanding growth models and climate models and where is growing what and what kind of renewable energy would work where, I realized that the bigger these projects were, the less they had to do with something that I would experience as healthy living communities or healthy living ecosystems. Yeah. And I realized that something is not quite working there. Yeah. And this something seemed to be money. Yeah. And that was the path I followed since then to better understand and also how to reconnect that back. Yeah.
So also then you studied that and you went into that world of dealing with money?
Yes, so as I experienced that something in this development of even, huge, so to speak, sustainable or renewable projects was leading into all of these conflicts like biofuel versus the Amazon or biofuel versus food and all of these things, I realized that I need to understand better what money actually is and how we could reshape that. So I joined a bank. That was, for me, made sense. Yeah. To really understand what is it that, how is that world working? Mm-hmm. And I realized that also there I met many, many good people. I was, in a Swiss private bank and really focusing also on sustainability. But I realized that even there, the degree of freedom to really make a change and really work with what makes sense for ecosystems and for people was very, very limited. Mm-hmm. So over many years, I looked for the even more powerful, even more, those that can really make the decisions. Up to, trying to influence the G20 talks and lobbying and all of these things. Yes.
And that was when you started to do your own things, one could say.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, when I realized that, after in engaging in even more lobbying activities, I realized that in so to speak, in the name of sustainability again, or this kind of change, basically I was on conferences. Yeah. And basically I was flying around the world to speak with banks about decarbonizing the portfolio, and was sort of questioning myself, is that really, how big is the impact that I can have really on any of those decisions, compared with what this field actually has an impact on me. Yeah. And I came to the conclusion that to not be part of the problem actually, or less, I need to become an entrepreneur and actually develop and co-create the kind of resources and money flows that are needed. Yeah.
Arie, what was your way? I mean, I know some quite strange things. You were a basketball player, for example.
Yes, I was in the Israeli youth team for basketball. As you see, I'm not very tall, so I had to be very quick and accurate in what I was doing at that time. And then in Israel, everyone needs to be serving in the army. I was on this Mission Impossible unit that would save people who are hostages and things like this, and doing survival trips, which helped me later with education. And then I was working with as a kindergarten teacher. until I was asked to work with kids that were kicked out of school. They were doing drugs and stealing cars, and I said, I was asked, can you take these kids? I said, I don't know, I'll take them for 3 days survival trip, nothing, just as we are in the woods. And if they survive, I can work with them. And if they don't survive, I solved your problem anyway. So,
but you knew that they would survive.
Of course. So then they said, yes, as long as you do with them anything, it's more than we think can be done. So I did it. And then, why do you steal cars? Oh, we love cars, and yeah, but then you steal it, you get filed with the police. So what should we do? You love cars, let's build cars. So we took 4 cars from a junkyard, broken cars, and with a mechanic, we fixed them after 6 months. Can you imagine, 15, 16 years old kids? We had 4 cars of our own. No license, no, we didn't go on the roads, but you can imagine how wildly they were driving in the bushes with these cars. So afterwards, I became an artist. Actually, I studied in England art and Waldorf education, and I started a career as an artist. I had many art exhibitions in Europe and many prints and publications. And parallel to that, I initiated the Waldorf teacher training, academic, in the David Yellin College in Jerusalem. And all along, I was trying to understand...
Which is a public
it's a
university.
Public,
so in Israel, you can study Waldorf education and get an official certificate by the state?
Yes, and also Bachelor of Education and a Waldorf capacity. And then they've opened over 25 schools. They and other students from other parts of Israel, amazing work.
Which means, just for those who watch, that in fact in Israel there are more Waldorf schools than in Germany, for example, compared to the population, right?
Yeah, there are many, and it's interesting because its origin is supposedly, it's from German language speaking, and it's Christian and so on. So we had some interesting things, but that's for a different discussion. Anyway, my experience was that something doesn't work with the economy. Instead of the economy serving the people, people became servants of the economy. And like Katharina said, this phenomenon that money is created as a debt, but the bank doesn't give you money that he has. People think that I have some money in my bank account and you want to lend, so the bank gives you and it takes it. No, they create money out of nothing. So when you come and take a loan, the money just print numbers, and they don't tell you that now you became a 30% worker of the bank for 20 years, that you need to return to them what they just printed. I thought it's crazy, and I also didn't like to come to people and ask them for always donation for artistic and cultural and educational experiences. And when you go to these donors, you talk to them, and if they agree to something, you shake their hand, you need to count how many fingers you're left with. I said no. So I decided as a hobby to go into the business world and to then become a Trojan horse in the system. That's a story in itself, but I started developing big and bigger companies and initiatives in America and so on, and then we made a fund specialized for impact where we invest. We had even Pepsi-Cola buying organic drinks companies or things like that. But my conclusion was actually not very complicated, that the world really needs a new operating system.
Yeah, definitely, it does. Yeah. And that's where you also met and where you worked together, you know, with these different backgrounds. Can you explain, or can you say a few words about this new operating systems? What would be the basic elements of it? Katharina.
Well, I still start very concretely from that experience, because I was, as an entrepreneur, social entrepreneur, I was developing, regional initiatives, because I asked myself...
In Portugal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I asked myself, actually, from the essentials that we need as humans, like, clean soil, clean water, food, these things that bring a community together. Yeah. What actually does it need for a farmer to do what he's here for, she's here for, to really care for the soil so that we receive healthy food for our bodies? And what does it mean for an artist to really be able to to create the food for the soul that we also need, you know, these kind of things. And I realized you need regional initiatives. It needs really everyone around the school, around the farm, around these kind of things. And so I received this invitation from where I grew up, basically, to develop. Which is
quite a poor region.
Which is a very poor region. So basically, within Portugal, I grew up in Portugal, close to Lisbon, but this particular region that I was connected since I was a child, at the Rio Goetheanum, is a region which is heavily affected by climate change, by desertification. The soils are, since a long time, very exposed, naked, basically there. And also, you know, the economy, it's a downward spiral, because only 5 inhabitants per square kilometer, you can imagine, are left. Everyone else has just
leaves
left.
Because
leaves
they don't
because
find
there are
any
no the young people, and the story goes that, you know, only those that are absolutely losers stay, and from those, the ones that don't make it become farmers, right? So turning around that story.
How?
And
what did you do?
Well, first, I understand that, well, we can't tell farmers how to farm. I'm not a farmer, right? So the thing that needs to be done first is to show that it works. So we had one farmer married to one of the ladies that invited me there, that we started with women in the beginning. And actually, so we actually asked someone that really knows about how to heal the soil. In this case, it was Ernst Götsch from Brazil, working with syntropic farming. So actually what we did is we had the first land plot, and we showed that it's possible. And this is something that farmers really like to see, to come and to see that actually the soil remembers. If you really start working in plant collaboration with dynamic agroforestry, which really working with it, it comes back. And that was the first thing. And the second thing was we were invited to work.
You say it comes back, you mean the fertility, the soil life, and
the vegetation.
The vegetation, okay.
If you work with those plants that really can work in that region, so you wouldn't, you know, work with the annual vegetables first, but rather with those that really are working there. And then actually it turned out that there were missing teachers, and the possibility from this initiative to work really with the children and transform all the school gardens into syntropic farming plots, and work with the children, and at the same time work with the grandmothers. So inviting in monthly activities, and inviting culture, inviting, you know, cooking with the always 5 grandmothers to cook the old recipes with the old farm. So basically working with everyone and starting to build this community around food and around farming. In the meantime, this has grown. There, you know, an educational program for newcoming farmers on different land plots, and it's growing and established, and also targeting now the bigger areas up to 10,000 hectares with different agroecological techniques. But I realized that, you know, we could continue with, how would you say in English, Schenkgeld, you know, philanthropic money, to fundraise for that with Swiss foundations, because that's what we did. We needed that, right? So that kind of support to be able to build up this kind of initiatives. And yet I was feeling...
In order to build up, so to bring in this change...
Exactly, but even the systemic...
then it will be sustainable, or it is?
Well, from the beginning, the intention is all of these different initiatives to become entrepreneurial and self-sustaining. However, the structural, peripheral challenges in these parts of the world are so extreme that I was asking myself, you know, bringing in philanthropy for such a long time, like Arie was saying, you need to count the difference. So it's a difficult situation. And also I observed in many of these good projects that there is a phenomenon that I call, you know, a big retailer comes to town, or I mentioned without just naming that, but Walmart comes to town, you know? And this phenomenon, I think many people know and observe, is that if that happens, if one of these big retailers or companies comes to such a peripheral village, what happens is that the small producers, the small, you know, little tiny businesses don't have a chance, because everyone just buys at the big one. And what then happens is those that are lucky from the farmers can deliver to those ones. And those, you know, that are lucky have a job at the retail, maybe. But all the money is like a vacuum cleaner soaked out of that region. So it's not circulating anymore. It's soaked out of that region and goes to the headquarters somewhere. And I was asking myself, how could we actually rebuild this? How could we bring this flowing quality that money actually has? And there's even an economic term, which is, MV equals PQ, which is money times velocity is price times quantity, which means, the velocity with which money flows, and not only money, also the resources flow, that is what can make a region really abundant. It's not actually the quantity of money that is missing, but it's the ability to circulate within the community. And that needs to be recreated in a different way. And that's how we met and came together to say that. But that's exactly what Shareitt actually, as one example, is doing. It's creating the flow of resources and money so that we don't have that vacuum cleaner phenomenon. Yes.
Arie, what is wrong with our economy, and what would you say are the most important points to look at and most important change?
Well, economy is actually a form of, neoliberalism became a form of religion. So unlike religious studies, when you can study about Islam and Judaism and Christianity and different streams, there in this religion you study only one thing, neoliberalism, and you have all sorts of formulas and so on. And then you have ideas that if you have inflation, or what you will be doing is that you will reduce the, you will have to raise the interest rates, and when there is a little bit of depression, you will reduce, and so on. And we see now that there is such a confusion that when the world is in a terrible economic situation, they're raising the interest rates, because that's all what they have in their tools. And it will create the opposite. It will make the crisis even more, according to my observation. So what happened that the economic studies have disconnected from the reality of life. And the economy, as I said, does not serve the life of people. And I've been working and meeting with the greatest economists of the world. I had the professor for economics in the Parliament of Israel that was the head of the economic community. And he told me, look, when it comes to money, I don't understand it. And I said, so who understands it? He said, maybe one person in the world I know that understands it. Oh, Martin Wolf, the chief commentator of the Financial Times. I said, okay, I'll talk to him. You organize it. So he organized it, and we met. And he was right. Martin Wolf really understood this. He also wrote about it then in his book. And when I talked with him about it, he said, this is very interesting. I agree with you. He said, but the thing you're bringing up, maybe the bankers are not going to like so much. And then he wrote a whole article in the Financial Times, how one needs to change the system because the money system doesn't serve the people. So this is what I see as a problem, that we need to start economy for the reality. What is the soil? How do we make the soil and the humus of the earth being more fertile? How do we make sure that the water of our world is a good, healthy drinking water? How do we take care that the people are happy? How do we take care that families can build their life and not be completely stressed because of the money? Because the money is something that people are creating. It's not water in the desert. Water in the desert, you can say, okay, there's too little. But we can make as much money as needed to make our society healthy and happy. And everyone has the right, just like the animals and like the plants and the birds, to be free and to be able to unfold his capacity. So these are the...
So Katharina, you not only studied, you also do and teach economy or change, economic change. And we were talking about the creation of money out of debt. And if we look at the allocation of money today on this planet, then we have incredible growing amounts of debt. So mostly it's the states, the communities, it's the so-called public hands, I don't know the precise term in English, where today you find all these debts. So we are all debitors. We all owe something to someone, and at the same time, the amount of money is constantly growing. That is in private hands or in the hands of funds and trusts, and so there's no equilibrium at all. What can we do to come closer to equilibrium and to a circular economy?
Well, first of all, it's very interesting with the debt question that you raised, because I observed, and there's not so much research about that, but I observed actually, if you look at these numbers of the ecological footprint, I'm not sure if you're aware, that was since if you look at these numbers, you can see that somehow in the 70s, collectively as humans, we entered a phase of ecological debt. So that was when we started actually, that year by year, it's earlier in the year that we reach that point where we use more of the resources that actually Earth can provide us for. And that's a very interesting thing if you compare it. When is that financial debt starting? It's also about the same. So I can't, there is no research, I can't say if that's a causation, but I can observe it seems to be a correlation, right? That at the same time we enter an ecological debt and I observed many of those things. For example, as an environmentalist, I was working with engaging financial institutions also around these questions around palm oil, for example. It's a very heavy, very difficult question in Indonesia, in Southeast Asia. And I was observing at the time where the hot money, so to speak, in the last financial crisis, everyone was, in panic, looking where to put all this money, right? And that was flowing into what? So to speak, commodities and emerging markets. And what were we seeing at the same time when we looked our perspectives on that part of the world? It was that big haze, when all this rainforest was burning, so that even in Singapore, people in the financial district could see that, could actually not ignore it anymore. So that's a very interesting observation about that. What happens, it seems so disconnected, and it is, but there is direct consequence of what we are doing in the financial sphere.
But when you say it's connected, may I ask you again, because you just said you see a correlation between the ecological debt and the debt in the money or finance field. Where could this connex be? Where is it connected? And how?
A financial, an agreement about what we consider to be money that is based on that kind of, debt and needing to sort of stay in that loop forces us to actually dig more holes or to build more bridges and to build more roads and to cut more forests. So that sort of needs to change in my view. And we have possibilities to do that. And
so now if we want to change that, or if people say, I don't want to feed that system anymore, can I, at least with a part of my life or my money or my consummation, what I need and what I do, can I step out of that? What can people do?
Of course, everything that connects humans with humans is helpful, right? So the whole movement, and that's also where we engage in with Shareitt, look, only the name, right? Is being part of the sharing economy, right? So saying that we as people have already a lot of abundance, both in things that we own, that we have, that we can share, that maybe are even stuck. We call it sometimes the dormant capacities or the dormant resources, that because of that scarcity phenomenon of money, we don't really bring into the flow. So we, the long tail, and we can look at the statistics of things that are in our homes and could be shared are not, because, when we start doing that with the conventional money, we compete with the cheaply produced things from Asia, for example, or the cheaply produced and polluting things. So it's not, so to speak, it's not worth it for our time and effort to start entering that, that sphere. However, if we leave that paradigm and we say, well, we do it in points, in gratitude points, a whole new world opens up. And as I said, it's not only the dormant capacities from items at our homes, from clothes or anything, it is also from our capacities that we are not using. Think about, even in economically harder times, all the inventory of companies, if we could make them, using and exchanging that in a better and clever peer-to-peer form, how big would that potential be? Even imagine the whole anthroposophic movement doing that amongst themselves. What could that unleash as capacities? And then think about talents. You may find at the normal, local supermarket someone working there and just, working there. But she may be a pianist from somewhere, and that potential is not being yet used in the conventional money system. So how can we unleash these potentials that we have?
How can we unleash these potentials? What you say, Arie?
Yeah, I think it is something that I observe can happen at all levels. Even this thing that we discuss about the money creation and the debt system, we have in the history. Look at Lincoln. Lincoln, for example, ran out of money, couldn't pay to his soldiers. He was going to lose the Civil War. And then he was sitting and thought, so now I need to get more money as a debt. He spoke with the people in Washington. They said, you will need to give us 24% interest on the money you will lend from us. And he said, 24%, that's in 3 years, doubles. And then he went to New York, maybe they will give him a better rate, 36%. 2 years, it's over. He said, but I'm the president of the United States and I need to put everyone into debt. No. And then he created the greenback, which actually was money that was created not as a debt. And this way he won the war. And then later he was going to apply it for regularly. He won the elections, but he didn't manage to stop in the right place. A bullet 40 days after he was assassinated, very sad. In Canada, they were saying in the war, there was a big problem with the depression and everything. And then one of the people in McGregor asked a question, but can't we change it? Why are we in debt? Why don't we have anything? And he was speaking with the head of the bank, and the head of the bank was saying, it is within the right of the Canadian Parliament to decide how the Canadian money is created. So they actually did it. And they created all the bridges and universities and hotels, and they went through the Second World War, sending people from Canada to save Europe from Europe, and all of these things. And there was not a single inflation. There's a research about it. It didn't create inflation. People say, oh, you print money. No. When you print money for work, for activities, for resources, you don't get into inflation. And then, like Katharina said, in the 70s, you said the Canadians are very good in hockey, they're famous in the world. So when you look at the debt system, from the 70s, it becomes a hockey stick, like all the other governments. And now
climate.
And now they lost completely track of it. In America, they own $100 trillion. Now, because it is digital, what does trillion say to you? What does billion say to you? Let me explain to you what it is. If you take $1 pile, a pile that is 100-meter high, like a big building, is $1 million. That you can understand. But now, if you ask, so what is 1 billion? Well, if you take the money and you, like a paquette, and now you put it along the highway from here to Geneva, this is 1 billion. So, but what is trillion? What does it mean that America is now in 30 trillions? 32, whatever, it goes every day as we speak. It's a pile to the moon. 2.5 is reaching the moon. It's true. It's unbelievable. So you have now 10 piles going to the moon. It's ungraspable, and it goes on. They print and print, so there is no money, and no one can save it anymore except change the system. But the good news that they are able to change the system. People are able to change the system. It's a matter of choice, letting go of this old thing. 40 people, the richest people, own more than half of the population of the world, 3.7 billion people. So it can't go on.
Okay,
like
but let's stick there for a moment. No, for a moment, when you say change the system, what is necessary to be done?
Start with the essential. And the essential is actually to ask, what do we really create in our life? That might sound philosophical, but there is nothing more practical in life than love. So when you ask yourself, at the end of my life, I may have a beautiful house and garden, may have cars, may have all sorts of things, but nothing of it is going out of the gate of death. So when I ask myself, so what does go through? I believe, from my experiences, that actually I may be incarnated again in 100 years or 200 years or whenever it comes my time. And the only thing that will last these 200 years is the relationship that I created with people. That's my karma. So in a way, the Shareitt platform and app is actually a good karma app. Because what it does, it creates relationship. Because this is really what sustains also death. And so when we look at it this way and we say now, every company, every initiative, every business, every school has a task to create healthy relationship. It has the task to enable people to be less lonely and to get to know one another and to be more happy. When we look at it this way, then the money system is actually can very easily help the resources exchange, the exchange of values, and the exchange of capacities of people, but also the skills they're having. And at the moment, the money system covers maybe 10% of the economy. And the way it is covering that, it manages to ruin everything that we have, the water, the earth, the communities, everything, and very fast. Look for fish, soon you won't find fish because of these big productions and so on, and pollution. So when you look at it, so how can we change it? What can we do to do it in a different way? You see that the 90% of economy that is not taken care of is an economy of the homes, of mothers and parents in the home with their children. It's an economy of people who have so many capacities. They are artists, they are people who can do things, they have skills. And all of that doesn't work very well because there is no money. So what we say, let's create money for those things, and then suddenly unleash, like Katharina described it, and enable economy to flow. And that is economy of love, economy that streams from the heart. So this is how I see this.
Yeah, and in some way this is extremely concrete what you say, because I mean, I'm not sure whether all people who are listening to our talk, watching it, believe in karma and reincarnation, but even in our life, I mean, as far as I know, 85% of the money at the stock markets, of the money that goes into all this speculative forms, is in the beginning money by insurance companies or money that people save for their future needs. So we all think one day I'll be old, so constantly through my life I have to save money, 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 so that when I'm old, that I'm fine, you know. But the thing is that when you're old, the money won't help you. I mean, in reality, it's people. It's someone who cares for you, someone who loves you, someone who cooks for you, someone who goes walking with you, and all this stuff. And if there's nobody who wants to do that, all my money will be for nothing. So this idea of going back, not creating or not seeing all our relations through this, let's say, glasses of money, but look at what's the real relation. What can I do for you? What can you do for me? This, from my understanding, is the basic thought of what you're doing, be it what you started in Portugal, be it Shareitt, or be it other things, because I understood there's even more that you are planning or already doing. What are you on right now?
Yeah, I just wanted to add here that you're absolutely right. The disconnect you can see in the financial markets if you looked at all the derivatives and the proportion that goes from that money into real economy compared to, as you say, the insurance or the even more abstract, disconnected world that is more like a virtual world, is really a huge disconnect. And therefore I came to that conclusion that we need, as Arie said, to start with the essentials. And if we create some new form of, I would say, a more live or thriving money system or creation, resources need to be first. So actually, money needs to present our collective resources and the value of that in, for example, a marketplace, right? And then only have the task to enable the flow and circulation so that those that need receive what they need and those that want to give can give what they can. And that's a very simple thing that can be translated in even, in other systems. And I do believe it's not only Shareitt, it will be an ecosystem of different solutions to fulfill very specific needs. And we were surprised then that this platform that was created to enable the resource exchange. So this is not only about items, but that this was then asked by a totally different sphere of life to help create really the exchange of resources, and that was in the field of education, funnily enough. Where, in the beginning you have, or until now you have a very hierarchical model still, where you have a teacher and then you sort of have these passive listening students. And maybe Arie can say how the platform actually helped to, in a very short time, turn students from passive listeners into actively creators, co-creators, and actually co-teaching each other. And that changes everything.
So that's a different kind of use of that platform you created.
Yes.
How does it work?
Well, children like to play. They like to be happy, they like to go around, they like to create things and so on. So we looked at it again and we said, let's decentralize the learning process. Let's give the teacher a break. He's tired of being a stand-upist who's trying to excite the children and then being a police person when it doesn't work and demanding, why do you do this, you go to the, and so on. So we created a system that will help the teacher and the children to collaborate. And then we started with a school that is in a very low society circumstances, and when we started, we saw something that we did not expect it to happen in this magnitude. Suddenly the children were happy, they were creative, 2 10-year-old girls were creating a video about something that really matters for children. Maybe they don't care what happened 2,000 years ago, but they definitely care of what happened this morning. How can I wake up in the morning and go to school because it's depressing, I don't want to go to school. So they made a nice video to help children to overcome this problem. Was successful, they got some points in the system. What did they do with the points? They bought a day free from school. So this kind of innovation, then the children, there was a problem because many children don't come with sandwiches. So someone donated the material, but it needed to be packed. So some boys and children were helping packing because they were getting points. And what did they do with the points? They got the permission to determine what music is played in the breaks. And teachers, they need help. They finish a long day, they teach 25 hours a week, it's unbelievable stress. And then they meet parents and everything. And then they're expected in a school like this to sit with children after time to help them with the homework and so on. They get paid like €8 an hour. So the children said, we'll do it. We'll get points. So the elder children are teaching the younger ones. And when you teach, you get 90%. When you are listening, you may get 10% if it's a very good lecture. But the whole atmosphere changed, and the librarian...
now not 90 or 10% of points, but you need of skills, knowledge, capacity.
Yes, you learn also when you're teaching, you learn 90% more than when you're listening. So turning all the children, the community, it becomes a mutual learning process, co-creating. And this is also what we believe the children would need in the future, because we don't know what world they're walking into, but definitely they would need to have a great ability of creativity, adaptation, but most of all, relationship ability. And at the moment, through the technology and other things, where they are not applied in the right way, we become more and more alien to one another. And that is a serious thing that we need to meet. And just one comment in relationship to the way now the ownership structure of resources in the world is built, that you think maybe there is a big company of food company, or maybe there is a big media company and they own this, and maybe there is Facebook and they own this. But when you look at the actual ownership structure, all of these big companies are actually owned by huge funds that are holding trillions of dollars. So you look up, who owns all the food suppliers of Europe? It goes to BlackRock and Vanguard. Yeah. And then who owns the medias? BlackRock and Vanguard. And then you ask, so who owns BlackRock? BlackRock and Vanguard. And who owns Vanguard? BlackRock and Vanguard. And you ask yourself, who is managing all of this speculation over our head with money moving days and nights, and the bourse is falling down and so on? Aladdin. Aladdin is not a boy. This is a supercomputer that does 40% of this automatic. The whole world can fall apart, and Aladdin will still do all of these things after we die. So we need to see how can we come back to reality. And reality is the simple life of people, good people, and it is possible when you decentralize it. Because when people begin to work together, amazing potential is unfolding.
That is an extremely important point, I think, because, I mean, you talk about BlackRock. They started in 1999 with 300 million US dollar, and today they have 8 trillion invested capital. And
much more. They're investing literally directly or indirectly way over 10 trillion.
Yeah. So that's the figures that I know. Yeah, but what I want to say is there's a, we are in a very interesting point of development of mankind, because we all, that's my impression, we all get more aware of these things. People look at things different from the past, not just from a materialistic, reductionist point of view. They do some spiritual activity, awareness, all these sorts of stuff. They look at things more in a more holistic way. And at the same time, the systems, the money system, the financial markets, and so on, they all develop into a form where in the end, it's not the people anymore that decide, but it's the system, the mechanisms we created that decide above, or that decide about our lives and what we do. And in the end, all companies will belong to BlackRock or Vanguard or Capital Street or whatever. So how can we bring that back into our own hands and our own responsibility? Where to start?
I agree. I see both things at the same time happening, Okay. And the power of this decentralization and people connecting with each other is happening at the same time. And just we're beginning to see the potential of that as we see the centralization, and really that everything is, just virtually done by. So I do see both things. And the question is, which one do we nourish now with what we are doing in the world? And if we look at that, it's very interesting that even in Shareitt, if people enter that space, because it's not money, they start behaving more generously, more playful, it's psychological probably, in a different way. Yeah. And with, relating to each other. And obviously entering, for example, into schools and education, this is the opposite than introducing money rewards into education. But it's very interesting because the universal principle of reciprocity and gratitude is also there. If you enter the whole, what one talks beside the sharing economy, the gift economy, right? So of the Schenken. Yeah. But still, the principle of reciprocity in a way, exists. It's just a universal thing. Yeah. And how to introduce that also in that sphere, in that social sphere, and how to really consciously work with that. So that in the school example, for example, the children together with the teachers can set what are things that really would be an expression of gratitude for you. Mm-hmm. So this is not the point. Mm-hmm. It's about what would be that expression, and these boys that we would love to decide, be able, when we get these points, to be able to decide actually what music to hear in the pause. And that discussion, that dialogue is already part of the change. Yeah. You know, where we really leave this narrative of something abstract that we don't actually have a human connection with. Mm-hmm.
So this also means that I can only be happy when in the end, I am happy and the other person's happy. So not like this, Donald Trump kind of deal maker. I do a good deal, I forget about the rest. And to create systems where we have this reciprocity, where I do not forget about the other, but do it together with the other person.
And that includes the other in terms of the other human, and includes the non-human. It includes obviously the earth, the elementary beings, whatever it is.
Right. And I'd like to ask you, Arie, how can, and this is a difficult question, I just say a few words more about it, but how can technology help us with that? I will tell you why it might be difficult, because I think that many people who have listened unto that point will say, don't we now again with Shareitt or other systems, or the one you told us about, the schools you do, be in the hands of a technology that might be cold and mechanistic, and where's the human element in it? So what can we do that technology serves us and not we serve technology?
I think it's an excellent question. I'm glad that you're asking. So, for example, in the school, the children don't use the app. It is just a management way to create the collaboration and to help. And in general, our approach is to create a system that will enable you to easily get into the source. I'll give you an example. In the time of the corona, there were many non-for-profit organizations that are doing good things, working with social matters, working with homeless people and so on. And they were getting half of the donation they normally would get, but they had twice as much people that they needed to help with. Yeah. So we said, we will help. So again, the same principle, start from the resources, and we said, now hotels, restaurants, banks, big producers of clothes, everyone is welcome. Upload in the app what you have in your inventory, what you don't need. And then, within a short time, we have a marketplace with millions of dollars that didn't cost us a cent. And now, we said, we can give every foundation a monthly budget, a basic income, so they can buy there. So I get a call from a guy that is, he had a big foundation for homeless, Lesova in Israel, with 6 million francs a year. And he heard about us, and he said, actually, I told the guy that told me about it, too good to be true, but because he's a donor in our, a big donor for us, and he's also an investor at your company, so he said, I call you. So tell me what it is. So I explained to him, you make 2,000 warm meals for children a day, and you have a center with the shower and the people are working. But we want to help you to be able to use all the money that you got for the meals and not buying furniture and clothes and who knows what. He said, yeah, that would be fantastic. So what should I do? I said, just call, we enroll you, and after an hour he was in, and then I told him, you are a big organization, so you get 5,000 francs a month to be able to do your shopping without paying money with your budget. And every month you will get that 5. Maybe at the beginning you need more because you didn't have much, so we can give you 10, 15, and then later you would use it. Really? I said, yes. After 2 days, They got in Tel Aviv 40 chairs, 10 tables, and 5 paintings of a very famous Israeli artist that one of the banks contributed. So this is not technology, this is life of people, that suddenly they were real things. Now Bedouins is the worst Bedouin community in Israel, financially, a municipality, and there are many poor people and families. So the social workers asked, can we join? We said, of course. We did it for you. So even the attitude, you know, oh, do we have money? How much money? Are you going to count? What do I need to pay you back? No, of course, you're welcome. So they came in. And when the container came, and suddenly you see these little Bedouin children running with Nike and Zara clothes and all of that, and they get the thing, you realize this is something that really works. And these endless capacities that businesses have to do that. And the computers in the time of the corona, suddenly they could order computers. It won't cost them. Every family suddenly needed two computers, places needed, and so on. So we have endless abundance in our life, and the skills, the capacities, and everything. And I have nothing against those people who are running the world in the way we described it. They're good people. In the banks, in the BlackRocks, their families, they're working, they're happy to get a good payment and go back to their children and to their communities, and they're doing what they understand. But when I was in America, I had to smile when they were showing archaeological places that are 200 years old or 300 years old. Because in Israel, if it's not 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 years, you don't look at it as archaeological. But we have many experiences of archaeological ruins that when they were digged in, they were a different civilization. And the old civilization were under, and over those, new civilization were built. So we don't need to fight anyone. We need to let them do the best and communicate the thing. But if we create a new civilization that is based on these values, at first people will criticize it. But once they see it works, people join it.
So I mean, don't fight the system, create a new one and invite people to join. Yes. Yeah. So my question now would be, I mean, Shareitt is there, it works, it's growing, many people are part of it. What are you on right now? Because you're already doing new things. What's the future?
Well, first of all, after being now with 77,000 people in Israel, we actually started, and it just came towards us in Rio de Janeiro. And again, as a women project, there is a pure women project, and we saw really the potential also in Israel already of integration, actually of people that would otherwise maybe not talk to each other. Through Shareitt, we just really connect through something which is so basic on the essentials that connects us all as humans, especially when you work with mothers, you know, just exchanging children toys and is something that can unite, right? And after these experiences, and we really understood that in places like Rio de Janeiro, where you would have really these discrepancies, this can be actually a very fundamental and essential safety net for many, many families and many people there. And really create something which brings society in a more coherent way together. And after that, we actually were asked, since we live in Switzerland, to do the same here. And there, very interesting, from the beginning, we see the potential of really also within the society. It's very different, but there are parts of the society, you know, that would not talk to each other. For example, women that are expats, people that maybe have their wardrobes very, very full and would like to have some kind of alleviation. And it's not about throwing anything away, it's really bringing that into and knowing that it's someone that will take care of these pre-loved items. And then we have, you know, like migrant and refugee women that may, from the beginning, you know, find a very creative way of taking pictures and becoming engaged, and therefore actually building their own new life in Switzerland, for example, through this possibility. So these are things that are still ongoing, and we are still on that. And the next steps, what we are seeing is really to unfold this potential of this kind of platforms for connecting people and resources flow for communities. Mm-hmm. Because I believe that, you know, communities, and that can be a municipality, that can be a village, that can be a network of common interest, that are sharing certain values, to really use that as a resources exchange. Because you have a growing, as you said, there are so many people waking up to certain realities that our economy is sort of standing at a point of real challenges, including the environment and all of these things. And more networks of common interest are coming together, both locally as communities and globally. But many times these are sort of networks that exchange ideas and come together on conferences, but then nothing really substantial allows the collaboration of really exchanging resources. And there I see the potential. That is.
So, Arie, what is your perspective? What could be the next steps you are aiming to?
Yeah, I think like Katharina described it, I think now we come to the point where we already built a model with the schools, and now we make it available for children all over the world. So these coming months we're going to start in India with schools. We're going to work in UK and South Africa, also in collaboration. We're looking at the collaboration with a group that does loving classrooms. It's amazing. They teach once a week how to love, how to do things, and they collaborate with someone that started a program in UK that was happy children, you know. Who thought that actually it's not a bad idea to teach people how to be happy? So we are collaborating with them, and they have already some statistics, and we have statistics that there's a dramatic drop in such schools with such activities, with the bullying, with the violence. The more children are actually managing to successfully grow in the learning, and their grades are going up. Less children are sent to the manager or being thrown out of the school. So this is a dramatic change. And there are a few children in the world, in fact, more than 1 million big schools around the world, and many children, 3.3 billion, huge amount of children are also in schools. So this is one way to make it available, but also for communities and networks. Imagine that just like you open a WhatsApp group or a Telegram group, you open your own marketplace with your reward system, with your currency that can support your values, and you can then have it grown. It could be local, it could be a network. I mean, the anthroposophical activities and businesses, for example, is an example. It's an organization that has certain values, and there are many organizations like that, that reaches the people through newspapers, reaches the people through medical activities, or farming, or Waldorf schools, and so on. And like Katharina said, they exchange information, but they can also exchange resources, they can exchange values, and suddenly also share it, collaborate. So the key is co-creating, collaboration, mutual learning. These are the tools that we are making then the possibility for communities also to determine how do we do the governance of our community. I mentioned in one of our discussions before that democracy and totalitarian or dictatorship are definitely competing who felt more bitterly when it comes to human life and rights. So what is the alternative? What would be the governance system that we can, as people, as communities, work with when there is no one who is controlling and manipulating the system for political advantages, so he can have the control and the resources and give it to his friend? And there are new models that are inspired by nature, like eco-governance and other things like this, that gradually, through the amazing creativity of community, will be unfolded. So the last thing I see in these processes is that what we did already is very little. But what is really exciting is what we didn't do. Because all what we are doing is giving the tools for people, for community to be creative. And I'm so excited about every new project. There are people there, and they create, and they fix it, and they do what they want. And I'm happy to be at service, and anything like that is a great thing.
Yeah. On the question of building the best possible, let's say, political system, I think we would need another video, because I would question you putting dictature and democracy at the same level, and I would insist in democracy with this basic idea of giving every person a say, and agreeing that law can only be when every person was involved and had a say, and otherwise it's not, or it's dictature. I would say that they are not on the same levels, and we should keep that idea from democracy for creating of a new system. But I would like to ask you in the end 2 questions. First question is, what role did anthroposophy play, or what importance does, or what meaning does anthroposophy have for your activities, for what you're doing? You want to say something about that, Katharina?
Yes, I just wanted to come back to the beginning of our discussion, because for me, really this deep understanding of money being the spiritual element of the economy. This is the fundamental thing, and if we take that serious, then we really need to change the money system, and we can't accept it as it is today. And that's basically one of the impulses that was guiding me through really looking for a solution where we can actually bring that element back.
Thank you. Arie?
Yeah, I would just make a comment to the issue of democracy and dictatorship, because just to be clear, as an ideal, obviously democracy is much more in the direction of people working together, and the decentralization and everything. However, when you look at how democracy has actually been manipulated, and how totalitarian system with the ideas of socialism and love by everyone was manipulated above, what I'm saying that the systems did not prove to be successful yet. So one needs to find a way that the way the politics are discussed are moving from, if I'm in politics, I will get into power and then I could control the thing, which is what is happening. And then I will give the people the information I want to give them so they will vote me again, etc. In the democracy or in the dictatorship is another way. But how do the people who have the rights to distribute the resources for the well-being of all will have the tools and will be guided to do that? And that is then possible, and obviously it will be easier to do it in a democracy situation, but it has to work in a completely different way. Yes.
No, let me just say, I certainly understand what you mean, but still I think the idea of, giving all power to one person, and on the basis of blood or family or of guns, is different from the idea of having constant elections or even referenda and deciding on issues by the people. So there's still, the idea itself is probably opposite. So I would still not put them on one level.
I think it's a good point, but as we saw with these financial companies, they're actually, in fact, a kind of a dictatorship that is working, a financial dictatorship, that it doesn't matter anymore. These politicians, they buy them, they speculate them, they manipulate them, the parliaments with their people who are lobbying for them and so on. So we need to think about it fresh, but I definitely agree with
what we talked about, like BlackRock and others, more and more, they have more invested money than all of the states on this earth have as their annual, what is the GDP, yeah? So it's incredible, and politics more and more get dependent by those, how can I say, by those new forms of dictatorship, definitely. But again, this question, anthroposophy, did it play a role, does it play a role for what you do, and how?
Yes, I would say that when I met anthroposophy in a library in a kibbutz in Israel, and I read it, I saw it was a practical thing, you know. There was a book, Knowledge of the Higher Worlds, and I was a basketball player, so it had exercises. And when I started doing these exercises, how do you gain knowledge of the higher world, I saw it works, and it made a difference for me. And so I then went further and studied it. But the thing that is most important for me, and sometimes people distinguish between anthroposophy and anthroposophists. And anthroposophists are different people who take it in a different way, and sometimes their behavior becomes like something that the outer world can attack, because look at anthroposophists, and they give this to, it's like, look at the Jews, look at the French, look at this, but it's not relevant. But what is relevant is the content. And when you look at the philosophy of freedom, for example, which Steiner then recommended that in the English edition it will be the philosophy of spiritual activity, then that had a real impact on my life. I said that for me there is nothing more practical in life than love. And in the first chapter of the philosophy of freedom, Steiner speaks about love. And he says normally people, when they think about someone who has love or in love, you know, they say, oh, it can't be objective. He is in love and therefore he doesn't see the reality as it is. But Steiner said you can look at it in a different way. That when you actually love, and you have love, your love to the phenomenon, to nature, to people, enables you to see deeply who they are, what lives there. And when you look at that, and you ask yourself, so what is the essence? Someone needs a philosophical book, a lot of things. So what is the essence of this philosophy of freedom? It's when we can act in an ethical way, in an individual way, not story about this and that, in this person, in this particular situation, and then activate our creativity, our intuition. And if we can do that in every situation of our life, be completely open, completely new, and do it with love, this is what anthroposophy gave to me personally. And then when I go into the world, I try to activate these values and work with other people and perceive them in this way.
Arie, Katharina, this is, you know, for my understanding and for what I feel, what you do. I mean, you look at the world not with, let's say, eyes that I'm here and there's the world, and you look with loving eyes at people, at the world. And you started activity to really transform it, transform yourself, transform the world. So I would say this is anthroposophy in practice. Thank you for doing that, and thank you for being my guests today.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation and the beautiful questions and contributions.
Thanks a lot.